afternoon program celebrating the 50 years here at Triadelphia. So if you all could take a seat, we'll be opening this song service with hymn number 506, A Mighty Fortress, hymn number 506.
Almighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing. Our helper, he amid the flood, of mortal ills prevailing. For still our ancient foe doth seek to hurt us woe. His craft and power are great, and armed with cruel hate. On earth is not his equal. Did we in our own strength confide, our striving would be losing. Were not the right man on our side, the man of God's own choosing. Dost ask for that may be, Christ Jesus it is He. Lord Sabaoth His name, from age to age the same, and He must win the battle. And though this world with devils filled should threaten to undo us, we will not fear, for God hath willed His truth to triumph through us. The Prince of darkness grim, we tremble not for him. His rage we can endure, for though his doom is sure, one little word shall fail him. That word above all earthly powers, no thanks to them abideth. The Spirit and the gifts are ours, through Him who with us sideth. Let gods and kindred go, His mortal life also. The body they may kill, God's truth abideth still. His kingdom is forever.
So the second verse, right at the end, it says, from age to age the same. In our life, like, things are always changing. We as humans expect change. But something that we can count on is that no matter what's going on in our life, God doesn't change, and that we can always rely on Him being there for us.
In the third chapter, third verse, it says, one little word will fail God.
Yes, one little word of God will fail the devil. Amen. Please turn to the next hymn, hymn number 373. And I see you all are just adjusting from, I'm sure, a hearty Sabbath meal. We want to hear all your jubilant voices as we sing this next hymn, Seeking the Lost, 373.
Everyone, please join us in standing. all be seated. This song, I'd never heard it before I went to high school. I had the opportunity to go to Fountain View Academy. I don't know if any of you are familiar, but they do a lot of singing there. And so one of the concert tours that we were on, I was up front leading song service, and someone asked for the song, and I had never heard it, but it was so pretty, and it's so full of enthusiasm and encouragement that I don't feel like it's one that you can sing sitting down, just because there's just so much energy in it. So our next song this afternoon is going to be 633, When We All Get to Heaven.
I don't think we can sing this one sitting down either. Let's stand for this one as well.
C.S. Lewis told a story about there were people in his day, they had gone to the theater, and they were praising the person who wrote, the play and the theater that they saw. They were praising the play for how real it felt and how they felt that they were in it. And C.S. Lewis said, what a shame it is that we as Christians live as if our salvation, as our future going to heaven were a fantasy, whereas people in the play world, they're taking what's fantasy and they make it feel real. And when we were singing the song, it was talking us through, being here on earth and looking forward to Christ coming, and when we get there and walk the streets of gold, when we all get to heaven. And it feels far away. It's not something tangible, but it's something that we believe is real. So Pastor Roland Smith will come up now and have our opening prayer.
And I'll stumble in place. Can we bow our heads? Our Heavenly Father, we come to you today because we want to praise your name, for thou only art holy.
We come to you because we come as people who need help, desperately need help. We want to finish working on doing so many things that are ahead in this church, and that is good. But Father, you've called us to do something far greater than that. You've called us to be sons and daughters of God. You've called us to put away sin. You said to us in this church that we are poor and blind and naked. We don't even know it. We still have so much. 1 million here, 1 million there. But Lord, we need you. We need the power of your grace to fulfill us, that Christ may be seen in us in ways that we have never yet known. Father, we come to you because we need that kind of relationship with you. Give us then, for those things that we need to put away our covetousness, our pride, our seeking for position. We come to you instead, humbly, as Jesus did, for he had nothing. And he invites us to take the cross daily, as the pastor said today, daily, and follow him, and walk in his steps. Steps of sacrifice and self-denial. Steps that may lead us into pain and suffering. But he learned obedience through the things he suffered. May we follow his steps wherever they lead us. We are on the verge of the kingdom. May we realize that we must be done with sin, done with selfishness and pride, as we accept in Jesus Christ, the only one that can free us from all the deceptions about to fall over us. Only as we seek thy face and walk humbly with you can we live in the days ahead of us. Help us in truth, in verity, to come to you in repentance, true repentance that needs no repenting of, in confession, in faith. For you said those that go through are going to be people that have this knowledge. Yes, they will keep all the commandments and every word that comes from your mouth. But you said they will have the faith, not of themselves, but of Jesus. It's that kind of faith that the Holy Spirit will recognize and let us into as we come together in unity with you, for your prayer was that we may be one. As we prayed earlier today, let us be one in Christ until we are truly transformed by your Spirit into that likeness where Jesus can be lived in us, that his love might be shared through us, not only to the prisoner and to the sick and to the poor, but every son and daughter of God that needs to hear that voice and know that there's hope and help and healing in him and in no other. Increase our faith. No, Father. Increase his faith in us that we may walk faithfully in him. And as we dedicate ourselves again today, we dedicate it to him who alone is worthy of everything we have and everything we are, and to him with all our strength, with all our soul, with all our mind, we come through his faith, his righteousness, and his Spirit, that he can finish the work that he's begun in us. In Jesus we pray. Amen.
Good afternoon. I am not here to tell you other things I forgot earlier. I'm going to ask Joyce if she would come join me, because I'm going to have Joyce share with us. She is the one who was in the video earlier and talked about, as she's making her way to join me, if you would come join me, Joyce. She was the one that talked about baptism looking through the rafters, and so we're going to start with her sharing first, and then I'll share a little bit more how we want to hear from you today.
Well, actually, I think I'm supposed to be giving a poem here.
That's correct.
And the name of my poem is A Special Homecoming for the 50th Anniversary of Triadelphia, September 16, 2023. So, today is a day of celebration and love, looking back through the years as we contemplate God's love. A small group we were at that time, it's true, but with prayers and belief, a new church would grow. God knew. There's still some folks here that remember back when we were a split from a big church way back then. And today we're celebrating 50 years of God's grace with joy and friendship and memories to embrace. Seeing old friends, but including new ones as well, let's think of some good stories that maybe we can tell. We may have to think a bit, and that's okay too. We're all family here, so sharing stories we should do. I'll tell you one of mine that happened long ago when church service was done from the social hall below. For the sanctuary above us wasn't quite finished yet, but a baptism for someone was already set. Now to that time long ago, I'll take you back to 1975, and this is indeed a fact. There was this young lady by the name of Joyce who made up her mind upon hearing God's voice, telling her it was time to be buried alive in the waters of baptism, but in your own time. It was soon after that when her decision was made, a decision in her mind she knew would never fade. On a bright, beautiful Sabbath, that step she did take, knowing in her heart that it wasn't a mistake. As the roof wasn't finished and looking up through the beams, a small bird flew over her, carrying God's blessing, it seemed. Since then, others have been baptized with the roof well completed, and we know there are stories out there by some of you seated. So come on, folks, let's share your stories today. The service is over now. Let's hear what you have to say. Let's all praise God for the blessings he's bestowed, as we've watched for 50 years how Triadelphia has grown. From a small congregation to the one we have now, let's remember those blessings and take time for our heads to bow. Now enjoy this day and the memories it brings, praising God our Father and Jesus our King. Each year has gone by as fast as can be, while our growth continues for all to see. So have fun on this day and the fellowship to come, sharing your stories with all of us till this day is done. God bless you each one as you finish out this day. And believe it or not, I have no more to say.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Joyce. I always appreciate your poems. What we're planning to do, you don't have all the details. We're going to kind of go through decades. We have some special musics intermixed and poems, like we just heard. And I am going to start with the 1960s and 70s. And I want to say that for the most part, us that are emceeing or speaking about the decades, we're not really wanting to do much talking. It might not seem like it right now, but I don't want to do much talking. And I want to invite you to share. And we have kind of a lot of time, so we're going to try to orchestrate that. And so I didn't talk to anyone about this, but I'm going to just say that I know that photo that's in the program, this program is from circa 1968, in front of the old Glen Church. I know there are at least 3 of those children that are here. And it seems natural to me that if any of those 3 children that were here in 1968 would be willing to come share with us, and I invite you to. I know who you are. I'm just not looking right at you, but I know who you are. I know where you're sitting. I think it would be wonderful to have you start sharing with us. And as you make your way, I will say that 1967, let me just tell you, because they're coming. I have very short time now. It's running out as I'm talking. HVA had just opened for their first time in September. That was their first year when they were there meeting here. Joe Cruz and the Amazing Facts Radio's broadcast that you are familiar with now, that was just starting in the conference. And I read about the fact that in those early days, they were excited because they had like 2 or 3 stations covering most of Chesapeake Conference. And you know what it is today. So this is the time that I invite Steve and Brenda to share a few thoughts. Yes, Ted Malcolm. And Norbert was here in those early days as well. Oh, yeah. So please, no more from me.
First of all, I'd like to thank Tony for all I know the work that he's put behind the scenes. It was over 2 years ago that he had contacted me and my dad about this. By the way, my name is Steve Lang. My dad, Phil Lang, as you've seen in the program, was probably the first head elder of this church. But anyway, Tony had contacted us over 2 years ago, and we had a phone interview together with my dad. Unfortunately, 2 years ago today, my dad passed away at 93. He lived a full life, was still very active in his little church in North Carolina until he passed. So it would have been nice to have this 2 years ago when he might have been able to come, but we want to say, from the Lang family, we know what this church meant to him his entire life. So anyway, the 60s. I may look old today, but I was definitely a preteen when this all started. My family was charter members, not me. I was baptized several years later after some evangelistic meetings at the old church. But anyway, what I remember, we were Spencerville members. Spencerville had become a large church. And we were looking out here at this county. I hear my parents talking. We were living in Highland. I lived in Highland for 16 years. Post Office Box 1, Highland, Maryland. People thought my dad might have been the mayor, but no. So we lived for Highland right here. This was close by, and driving into Spencerville every Sabbath. I was laughing to myself this week. I was reading on the bulletin about Triadelphia, and I think I saw somewhere you have about 250 members now. Spencerville was up to 250 members, and it was such a large church back then that it was time to branch off and move out to this county. So that's what started it. Small groups were not a buzzword back then. Everybody's talking about small groups and getting active in your small groups. Well, our prayer meetings are in local homes, our small groups. We met many Wednesday evenings in Malcolm's house in their basement. I have a story to tell where I got in trouble. I don't know whether Ted did or not. But, you'd go into the foyer of their house, and the stairway curved down to the large family room where prayer meeting was held. But, being a preteen, Ted and I were often playing somewhere else, and there was something in the basement that Ted wanted to go do or something, and because the stairway opened to the open room where everybody was, we decided not to go down the stairway, but as I recall, from the hallway upstairs, we slid down the laundry chute into the back part of the basement. I got in trouble when I got home, but I don't know whether Ted did. I don't know whether Ted remembers that. Maybe he climbed down the laundry chute, may often, because it was his house. But, I got in trouble for bypassing prayer meeting and going down the laundry chute to play in the basement. So the 60s and the 70s, things that I remember from getting this, as Pastor Murphy mentioned this morning, this was a bramble patch. This whole place was thorns and a mess. But when the bulldozers came out and began clearing the ground, that was exciting. As a preteen, to be involved in this building project was really exciting. Triadelphia Church has always been a church that has involved children and families. When one of your members has 10 children, the children are involved. The Adamski family, very, very much a part. All ages, all of us as kids were active with our parents in this. Seeing the trenches dug, the foundations laid, the block walls going up, and then the cement truck coming and filling the block walls, and in what used to be the front Sabbath school room back there, I remember as a kid, the things you remember as a child, I remember that one of the bricks gave way, and that cement they were pouring into the wall came through the wall and flooded that front Sabbath school room, so it all had to be cleaned up and the wall patched and refilled. Seeing these beams raised was another big memory. All this wood, there's a lot of wood on this roof. As I recall, the main part of the roof, what I remember, these boards are 4 inches thick. They have a double tongue and groove. But I believe the boards on the dormers are only like 3 inches thick. All that was not delivered on a truck to the building site. It showed up in a railroad car at a railroad siding in Gaithersburg or Rockville. And one evening after work, many of our church members rented a box truck, and we all go down there and stick by stick load all of this wood off the box car into a truck. It was nowhere ready to be put onto the building yet. We were not here. We took it to Brook Grove, and Carl Howell let us store it in his barn until we were ready to use it. So we unloaded it stick by stick into a barn over at Brook Grove. And then, of course, when the building was ready for it, it was back out of the barn and bring it over here. A lot of member labor was involved here. I remember as the walls were going up, I remember working here one Sunday as some of these beams are going up. And one thing that sticks in my memory, I don't know how true it is and whether anybody corroborate, but I know Roy Tatry took those beams that framed the windows and was hacking off 3 feet of the bottom of them with a chainsaw. There was discussion at the time that it's possible that the cross beams with the pre-drilled holes where they're braced in might have been installed a couple feet too low. If they had been 2 feet taller, these windows would have been bigger and we would have used the entire beams that were there. And at the end, we seem to have a lot of the 3-inch roofing boards left over, which would have been enough. Had these, it's just what I remember as a kid. I don't know how true it is, but it has always been a thought. What would this church like if those windows were 3 feet taller? Anyway, interesting story. I'm sticking with it because that's what I remember. The picture on the bottom of page 9 of your program is my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother, and my sister at that brick table propped up with bricks. It talks that it's a fellowship dinner, and that's possible, but it could also be feeding the church workers here during construction. Considering that there's cinder blocks there and looks like 2x4s on a table, that may not have been a church fellowship dinner. That may have been feeding the guys out here working on the building that Sunday. So it's up to wish. And the reason I also think that, my aunt she stayed at Spencerville. She never became a member. To have her here feeding people leads me to believe this may have been a Sunday work bee meal. On the next page, at page 9, my dad standing at the podium for groundbreaking. That's a picture that I remember. So the 60s and 70s, I had 77, 75. I went away to Blue Mountain Academy for school. For the last 2 years, I had gone 10 grades at Spencerville, and then I went to Blue Mountain for the last 2 years. So I came back here in 79, and at that point, my parents, we lived in Highland, I said. They had built the house next door on Haviland Mill Road, next door to Pastor Wilson's house. And I moved back home and moved into Haviland Mill Road, to the Haviland family road there, and lived there while I was going to college at CUC. And my relationship with Triadelphia continued after my high school years. I graduated from college in 81, and about 82, I was still coming out here. I was playing the organ maybe once a month. I don't know, I don't remember. I'd come out from Tacoma Park and play the organ on Sabbaths for church on the schedule. I started dating a beautiful young lady. We had gone to Sligo Vespers a few times and gone out to eat once or twice, but one Sabbath morning, for Sabbath morning, I said, "Do you want to go out to Triadelphia Church when I play the organ this week?" And she said, "Sure, of course." So we were sitting right there in the second row, and it was the winter of 82 or 83, early 83, and cold. And, nerves always get to you when you're playing the organ, and my hands were freezing. So I reached over and took her hand, and we held hands for the first time in this church, in that pew. It must have worked out, because next year we celebrate 40 years of marriage. So that worked out. So again, that's my story. I'll save some of the thunder for my sister and the others that are up here. But Triadelphia has been a big part of my life growing up. Nobody is perfect, but the Lord can use us with our imperfections to carry forth His work going forward. As I said, Triadelphia has always been a church that has involved its young people, and I was so impressed this morning to see the crew of young people that you have up here. Keep them involved. This is their church as well as your church, and God has great things in store for us.
As always, following my older brother is hard because he tells all the stories. And I thought this was going to be an interview with your son. That's what you originally asked me for. And here I am with no notes, nothing prepared.
Plan C.
Oh, Plan C. Okay, that's where we're at. Well, we've spent a lot of time today looking at pictures, reminiscing about the bricks and mortar of this church and the original Glen Elg Methodist Church, the newer Glen Elg Methodist Church, and now this one. And that's all wonderful and good, and I have really enjoyed coming back and reliving that part of the history of the church. But for me, when I think of Triadelphia Church, it's about the community. It's about the people, it's about the fellowship. Because to me, the Adventist church is not brick and mortar. The Adventist church is the people that make up the congregations. Amen. And this place is family to me. I was very small when we broke away from Spencerville, and granted, we have fond memories of Spencerville. I, like my brother, continued through Spencerville School up through 9th grade, and then I went to Blue Mountain Academy as well. So I have fond memories of Spencerville, but this is the people that I loved. I look out in the audience and I see Twyla and Jerry. They are just the fondest memories of my growing up here. They were a few years older than us. I looked at them and their marriage, and it's like, I want to replicate that. I babysat their children, fell in love with them. Their youngest son, Philip, proposed to me at the grand old age of probably 3 or 4. And I was 12 or 13, and I thought it was the sweetest thing, but I had to gently let him down. And that was in the Methodist church. This, of course, is the church where I married my husband in 1983. So I have fond memories of love from the Triadelphia church. But the members at the time just made such an impact in my life. I never forget going to the Janamsky home. You open up the front door, and there's an organ. First house I had ever seen with an organ in it, because Valtrout would practice. And she was the organist here and played beautiful music. Actually, at the old church, I don't know if she even was around when this church, did she ever play here? I don't think so. It was the Methodist church I remember her playing in. And I remember walking back to their kitchen, and it was the largest kitchen table I had ever seen, because this is the family with 10 kids and parents. And I thought, will I ever grow up and be able to cook for 12 people all the time? Little did I know that I would marry someone that would live on an academy campus, a boarding school, and all of my recipes for however many decades fed 12 to 15 people, because our house was always full of young people. So you just never know. I also remember Mr. Janamsky blindfolded us once and took us out to the sheds in their backyard. They raised chinchillas. And he said, I want you to tell me when you first feel the chinchilla. Any of you not familiar with chinchillas? They have the softest fur ever. So blindfolded, he took my hand and started pushing it down into the back of the animal. Finally, I felt it, and I opened my eyes, and I was this far down into their fur. Just the softest fur ever. Never would have known what a chinchilla was if it wasn't for the Janamskys. Twyla's parents, the Tatries, lovely people, had come from Nova Scotia. And one year, my family, mom and dad and my brother and I, decided to vacation with them. We rented a motorhome, went up to Nova Scotia. And we would go to all of their different relatives' houses. We'd tour around the island, pull into somebody's driveway. Roy and Jane Tatry would go in and sleep with their family. The four of us would sleep in our motorhome. They would have a hoedown every evening, because any of you familiar with Nova Scotia people, they love to play music on their fiddles and sing. And it was just the wildest thing as a kid, just to see all of these families interacting, making beautiful music, and the next night we'd be in somebody else's driveway, and just had awesome, awesome memories. We'd go to Twyla and Jerry's on Saturday night and play ping pong and popcorn. Just had such a ball. So many wonderful people in this church. It was all about community. It was all about fellowship. Sabbath was not just a 3-hour commitment of time in the morning. We would hike for hours on Sabbath afternoons. We would go down to the river on Haviland Mill Road, where my brother said we lived at one point. All of my relatives on my mom's side were Havilands. And if we sang, Shall We Gather at the River, I had that thing memorized because there were so many Jadamski kids, all of which got baptized in that river, and we would always sing that song on the edge of the river for each baptism. Just really fond memories. Pathfinders and adventurers didn't exist. We did start a Pathfinder club. I think Carol Zarska did a lot of the young people's Sabbath school, and I think she was instrumental in the Pathfinder Club, if I remember correctly. But a year and a half, 2 years into that, the Jadamski family moved to West Virginia, and there went 10 of our Pathfinders, and the club kind of just folded. Because we didn't have a lot of kids at that point. But I'm so thrilled to see the young people up here this morning, the choir that was singing, so thrilled that the Adventure Club program is strong and the Pathfinder program is strong. That's just huge. And my parting words to you all are, remember that church is not the structure that you're in. The church is the hearts that you sit next to each Sabbath. And it takes a village to raise a child, and that is true. I am a product of an entire village called Triadelphia Church. And I would encourage each of you to band together, love on your own kids, but love on everybody else's kids, love on each other. It's a hard world we're living in. There's some sad things that happen. Like my brother mentioned, I'm just so sad that my dad wasn't able to come back in 2020 when this was originally planned. Life is short. We never know when it's going to end. But while we have each other, let's love on each other. Let's show the love of God in everything we do to each other. And that's what church is all about.
Thank you. I want to, is Martha Ann? Where's Martha Ann? Right there. I want to invite Martha Ann. Norbert, I'm here. See, Norbert's one of those 10 children, so I don't know if there's 10 of them or just Norbert. So I want to invite Martha Ann, if you would come share. Okay, I have no idea what's going on now. So Norbert, come share while I try to figure out what I don't know.
I'll be short. So I am one of the 10. My name is Norbert, and my brother Bernhardt's here. Jadamski, but Yadomski is the German pronunciation. We were original members of this church back when we met in the old Methodist church, and I have very good memories there, and then moved to the new Methodist church. Twyla, your mother, was my Sabbath school teacher for quite a few years. And I was telling you this morning that I could remember she utilized Jerry to tell us stories. And I can remember, you get these distinct memories of Jerry coming into our Sabbath school class and saying, "Are you guys ready for a story?" So I don't know where that accent "story" came from, but that's the way we heard it. Roland Smith, we were quite young back then, but there was a connection because you were my pastor. Randy Murphy, I don't know if he's still here. Is he still here? Did Randy leave? He left. He was my pastor. So you're talking about a teenager or younger than that. And you guys were pastors that related with the young people. We lived on Route 108, just down from the Catholic Church. And so on the Sunday work bees, us boys would just run through the woods in the cornfield and come here and in short order and get here about as quick as Dad did with the truck. I can remember one day when this was all still growing up, before the road was even in, and we were cutting down some of the pine trees there. It was there was snow spitting, and we were cutting trees. And the ladies came out at noon, and there was a huge, whatever you would call it, a canning pot or a soup pot. And then other ladies came, and I don't know how coordinated it was, but all the other ladies came with a smaller pot of vegetable soup, and it all went into the big pot. So I don't know how organized it was, but on that cold Sunday at noon, it was the best tasting soup ever. If you can, to tell you how much value it is, you talked about involving young people. I can remember being on scaffold right through there somewhere. So we left here in 1975. I was a freshman in high school, and somebody invited me to come on up there and nail some of those boards. And so as a senior in high school before we moved to West Virginia, I have ownership of some of those boards and the nails, and I see that they're still there. So I will forever, because I was involved at that time, I forever will have an ownership in this church, and that's a value that you can't erase. So anyway, I'll stop there. Give people time.
So my apologies, I was confused on some things here. Martha Ann and the ladies are going to sing in just a moment. And I invite them to prepare. I want to just, while they are, and I'll stop the moment that they're ready, just to tell you, I was thinking about the young people that are slightly less young today, telling their stories, and I've read a lot of the history of the Triadelphia Church, and I've read all the minutes from the 60s and 70s and 80s and all the planning, and I'll just tell you a theme that it kind of resonates with me when hearing this is I read throughout that where the board meeting, they just pause and it's like, we need to pray, we need to fast. Like, what does the Lord want us to do here? Where do we buy land? What do we do? And it's just it's this theme over and over and over. And I just see the Lord's faithfulness and the way he guided them back then. And the faithfulness in these young people, and we'll call you young people, because you were young in that photo, coming back and just, still their family, and just appreciate that very much. And it's consistent with what was happening in those early days. Here we go.
You equate the gift with the place that you got that. Anyway, I've had that experience here, Sabbath school, Triadelphia. And anyway, it came in the form of Ted Howe brought two of his friends. They came for summer to be with Ted Howe over the summer, as I understand it. Now, this is the way I remember it. Any of you can remember it differently, but I'm telling it. So anyway, they were here in Sabbath school, and it seems that they were either looking through old hymns or looking for hymns that they didn't sing, that they didn't know. I'm not sure exactly. But the two friends also were musical, and the three of them brought a song. It was from the old hymnal, number 292, and it was called, "Oh, How Happy Are They." And I loved it from the start. It was played with guitar, and we were trying to share it with you the way we learned it.
And
of his love, I am carried above all my sin and temptation and pain. Oh, that all would believe and my sin never grieve, and thus cause him to suffer again, and thus cause him to suffer again.
So come join me, Archie. I know there's still people from the 70s have things to share, and we're going to do our best to try to work those things in, but Archie Daco is going to transition to talk about the 80s, and we'll figure that out best we can.
I think I'm introducing the 80s because I was born in the 80s. But a lot of cool things happened in the 80s. If anyone was a church member in the 80s, please come up. Come up so you can tell your story while I'm telling. Maybe some of you remember this. In 1989, President Reagan said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Also, in before 1985, they branded, I know a lot of us don't drink Coke. They called it New Coke. And their stock dropped. And all these Coke sales dropped. And then they said, okay, we'll call it Coca-Cola Classic, because they changed the flavor and then they changed it back to their old flavor. That's why they call it Coca-Cola Classic. Also, the year after Coca-Cola Classic, the mortgage burning during Sabbath was in May 1986. The GC president, Neil Wilson, was the speaker that day, and at the time they had 90 membership, and a whopping 125 came in attendance that Sabbath. Yeah. No one loves the 80s here, huh? It's okay, I still have more historical facts. Yeah, the 70s was a great era too. Is there any more stories from the 70s? Because I have a lot of historical facts. Okay, more on history. 1984 was the first Indian Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi. And then also the year before, in 1983, the cell phone was invented. I have one right here. Oh, this is the cell phone to God. This is Holy Bible. Okay, Lee, you got a story for us?
Yeah. All right. In the video, I didn't say anything about my parents at all. Marthann is, of course, my big sister. Some of you may not know that. I don't know. Paul Glenn's my brother-in-law. I always like to say he's a distant relative of mine. He's my brother-in-law's wife's husband. And I love to watch people try to figure this out. Simply means he married my sister. Anyway, Martha and I, we had been members of Sligo Church all our lives. I'll be 69 on Monday, by the way, 2 days away. I doubt that I'll ever grow up, though. But anyway, we started going to the Rockville Church. It was a smaller church, and we took at least 2 friends with us from Tacoma Park. We lived in Tacoma Park. I lived in Tacoma Park until I was 27. And for the first 5 years I came to church here, I still lived in Tacoma Park, right? Virtually across the street from Sligo Church. I could look out the front window, and there it was. But I loved it here. Well, we went to Rockville for a couple of years, and we had some friends that went here, and we heard about this church from them. And so we came here, and we were officially voted in membership in September of '77, but my parents were still members at Sligo. They came and visited occasionally and loved it. And we tried to convince them to join us here. Well, they would have gladly done that, except Daddy had been working at Columbia Union College, well, it was Washington Missionary College when he first started, since 1948. And he was aware that somebody got into trouble when they left Sligo Church and went to, I don't know, one of the smaller churches. And so he was afraid to do it. And he thought he'd get into trouble. But he checked with someone there at the college and found out that there wasn't going to be a problem. And so in the summer of 1980, they joined us here. I love Daddy very much. We were real close. There's something here in this church he did that's still there 40 years later. It's more than 40 years old. You see it all the time. In the hallway downstairs are a whole bunch of coat hooks. It's a simple thing. All the original coat hooks were all broken. It was a soft metal, and people would stand there in the hallway, talk to somebody, and they put their hand on it, and they all broke off. So Daddy went to Hechinger's. That dates it right there. Hechinger's has been around a long time. And he found some coat hooks that were different style, but they were real solid. You couldn't bend them. You try, you can't. I know they're solid. He installed those over 40 years ago, and they're still there. I don't know if they'll still be here when we remodel things. I don't know. I haven't asked anybody, but I just looked at that today as I was walking there, and every one of them's just a straight row. I don't know how he installed them, but if you look carefully, you'll see 2 holes on each side of each of those coat hooks. That's where the original coat hooks were. They had holes on each side instead of vertical. And that's something that he left here. He passed away in 1993, a little over 30 years ago. Of course, many of you knew my mother and didn't know my father because my mother lived long after he did. She was still living with me for 15 years before she went into the nursing home after he passed away. But we were all here together as a family for quite some time. And Martha Ann got married, of course, and before that she had moved out of the house. I still was there. And so I would drive out here with my parents in the back seat. I chauffeured them here. Usually we got here first. I was, for a little while, head deacon. And so that started that tradition, sort of getting here early. And it's very peaceful here early in the morning. It really is. You hear the birds sing, and it's quiet. But yeah, I have great memories of when my parents were still here. It's been 11 years plus now since my mother passed away. It's hard to believe it's been that long. But it was great to be here as a family, and we always had been together as a family at church and sat in a row. So it was really a great experience to have us all together once again.
Thank you. In 1981, Princess Diane and Prince Charles were married in England. But in 1982, Paul Glenn and Martha Ann Blecker were married here at Triadelphia. Yeah. Has anyone ever seen mice here in Triadelphia? Oh, yeah? But I hear there's a story from Brenda about, can we hear that story real fast?
If I had known that was important, I would have said it when I was up here. The very first Methodist church that we rented, that's now an antique store, when you go in, immediately to the left, there was a big velvet curtain that hung up behind the podium. And I was 6 at the time, 7, 8, in that area. And we would sit in the congregation, and it was a very old church, very drafty place. They had, the heating system was a hot air furnace that would blow up through huge floor vents. And I would love, when we had long dresses sometimes back then, you'd hurry into the church and you'd stand on the vent and all that warm air would be under your skirt. It felt so good. But anyway, all of us kids would sit in the congregation and we would look at our parents up front and the pastor preaching. And those velvet curtains were a very intriguing place for little mice. And on many a Sabbath, while they were preaching, the little mice would climb up the curtain and run across the top, and we'd get giggling and create a real ruckus. And we would get looks from our parents and even sometimes looks from the pastors, but it was quite funny back then. Now I look at it and it's like I wouldn't have tolerated if my kids did that, but back then, you know, it happened. We were very glad to move to the next newer Methodist church because that first one was in pretty bad shape at the time. Anyway, that was my story.
Oh, there's Larry back there. I was just going to say I'm filling in for the Cruz brothers who were here in the 70s. At lunch, Dennis was telling us a few things about being on the building committee. And he's the one, by the way, that did the stained glass window. But little did I know, I had never heard this before, that he's actually responsible for these clear windows being here because there was a plan to put what's called a crinkle glass. It was the kind of thing that you couldn't see through, and it was dark. And he said that he stood up and gave a passionate, as best he could, and as eloquent as he could, to say, this is a unique setting, and we need to be able to look out these windows. So praise the Lord that we have nice, clear windows here on the sides. He was telling us about the stained glass window that he felt today kind of bad because the glass that he got wasn't like the kind of special glass that he learned about later when he made a whole lot more stained glass windows. Like he did the stained glass window at Washington Adventist Hospital, and he's designed the ones at the Asian Seventh-day Adventist Church next to the General Conference. Anyways, so he was saying he's embarrassed because he just used what he could find at the time, but I think he did a really good job. The first carpet was red, so that this flowed in. The next carpet was blue because of the blue up top there, and now it's beige. But anyways, back when Larry was here and Dennis, the Langs were here, of course, and the house. And then I started coming in 1980 because I started dating Larry. I'll never forget the first day I was here because there was a lady that liked Larry. And she was not happy to see me at all. I was down the fellowship hall. Larry took me over, introduced me to her, and she said, after a couple minutes, when Larry was saying he needed to go do something, she said, well, I can't stay here and watch her. So anyways, it was an interesting introduction to the church. But Larry and I were married here in 1981 also, along with the same year Martha Ann and Paul were married. And, it was 82. I thought he just said 81. I couldn't remember. Oh, okay. Anyways, but we remember Martha and Paul being here, and we remember the house. I remember the very last Sabbath that Sue Howe was here. She had cancer, and she was just sitting over here on the side, and she was like an angel. I remember just her great faith in the Lord, and I don't know if you recall Mr. Howe and knew his first wife. It was a real witness to everybody. So anyways, it's been a pleasure to be here at the church. Larry and I were gone for 7 years and came back here because this seemed like home to us, so we joined back here. So it's been a wonderful blessing to us.
Also, a fun fact, we haven't been in such an economic crisis since 1981. But we know that these turmoils and crises will be just like the 80s, over. And after, when it's over, Jesus will come and we'll have that big reunion at the Sea of Glass. Amen. We have our next musical guest. Will your anchor hold? That's the congregation. Nope, sorry. That's Hope. Yeah.
Testing? Okay, we're on. Yes, my name is Hope Vasquez, and my husband and my 2 children and I are here from Florida. My husband is a nurse, and we are on a travel nursing contract. And I just want to say it's been really enjoyable to be a part of this special program here, and we're glad that we found this church while we're here because we've been really blessed by the people here. It's a really special church. 2 years ago, we experienced our 3rd miscarriage, and it's a very difficult and heartbreaking thing to go through, and I know some of you can relate to that personally. But in the midst of the pain and confusion came this song, and it was one of the things that helped me begin my journey of healing. But I think that God gave me this song for everyone here because we've all experienced loss of some kind, whether it's a loss of a loved one, a job, health, a relationship, a dream. And these things can be hard to endure, but it's because of all that God has already done for me that I can move forward in the midst of pain and know that in sunshine or in rain, I can keep my eyes on Jesus, and He's going to make something out of these broken pieces of my life. And He's going to do that one day at a time as I put my trust in Him. And Psalm 118:25 says, "This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." One more day to walk in the sun in the morning. One more day to sing in the rain while it's pouring. Pain can make you think there's just no way you can make it through the day. And many times in this life, it seems to have its way, and the clouds roll, and I can't take anymore. But I know that life's too short to not walk through that door. One more day to walk in the sun in the morning. One more day to sing in the rain while it's pouring. You can't take my faith, my hope for tomorrow, 'cause I was made to look up and stand up tall. Stand up tall.
the pain of losing what you loved. You've waited long, is something wrong? 'Cause now we're at square one, when there's no answers and your world is out of control. There's a plan to make you whole. You gotta watch it all unfold. One more day to walk in the sun in the morning. One more day to sing in the rain while it's pouring. You can't take my faith, my hope for tomorrow. 'Cause I was made to look up and stand up. I was made to walk in the sun in the morning. I was made to sing in the rain while it's pouring. I've got so much more than I ever had hoped for, and I'm just gonna look up and stand up tall. Stand up tall. Stand up tall. I'll stand up tall.
Come on up, Vicki. When we first came to this church, it was January 1991, and we were newly home in the States from spending 9 years in Africa. And we found this church that January, and it felt like home. And actually, it was Vicki's parents who were here. Ernie Runge was the pastor, and her mom gave the biggest bear hugs. And I'll never forget the first time we came. You all know the Runges. The warmest, happiest people. And we came, and our girls were fairly small, 2nd grade, 4th grade, and I think Emily was in the 7th. And we immediately felt at home. But one of the things that we liked, I'm going to just share a few memories that just stand out. We loved Christmas time, because at Christmas time, I don't know who provided those tall hats and the red capes the women put on with the white furry collars. And it was December, and we would go out in the freezing cold. And I remember the Warnicks. Elder Warnick was always going with us. Bob Blum, who always had mints in his pocket for the kids, and Andy Roberts. How many of you remember Andy Roberts? He was known as the Candy Man. You remember that? He always had candy in his pockets for the kids. And Andy and Virginia Roberts. I still hear from Virginia. Andy has passed away, but Virginia Roberts is in Florida. She, I'm sure, would love to have been here. But we would go out probably 3 or 4 Saturday nights, 3 anyway, in December. And we would go from house to house, and sometimes it was freezing cold. And we'd come back and would have hot chocolate and soup or something. But I remember one night going to a house, and somehow the angels were singing with us, and they were so impressed. They said, "Oh, we're having a party tomorrow night. Will you come back and sing for us?" I don't think we went, though, did we? No, but anyway. But we would get, sometimes we got some really good donations, but we just had fun, and it was such a family feel. You know, it was just such a wonderful fellowship. And sometimes Rayleigh Cooper, when they came, she'd play her accordion, and it was a wonderful time. They do it now. I think you still do it, don't you? It seems like we're not here that often, but anyway, I'm glad you keep it up. But you need the capes and the tall hats. And sometimes, didn't we carry little lanterns too? Anyway, the neighbors expected us every year, and it was just a very, very sweet time. In 1995, the organ was donated to the church. We had an organ when we moved here, but this is quite a nice upgrade. And it was Jean Clayton Dorothy's contribution after her parents died. So she gave that in memory of her, in honor of her parents. And Tony gathered some information for me to share. In 1998, Triadelphia had a health screening booth at the Howard County Fair. And unfortunately, we loved it when we were able to volunteer. One of our grand prizes was we brought a beautiful little yellow kitten home. You know how people get rid of pets they don't want to? At the end of the Howard County Fair, they came through with these 2 adorable little yellow kittens. And I'm a sucker for yellow cats, so we took both of them home. I gave one away, but anyway. So anyway, at that year, the Triadelphia Church gave away Seventh-day Adventists Are the Hands of Hope. They received this little booklet. So we have been well represented over the years at the Howard County Fair. But we have more memories, and Vicki and Pat Horst, there are many of you, Jan Ernston, the Passengers, you must have memories of that time. Do you want to share? Pat Horst, I remember first seeing her playing the piano for Sabbath school. And I think the Ernstons came a little bit later, didn't you? There was an influx from another church. I don't remember what year that was. 1995. Okay. Come on up.
Oh. If you heard that, Nancy's talking about how she loved the ingathering. That was the one negative. I thought, oh, I don't know about this cold going out ingathering.
But Ted in the top hat.
Yes, yeah.
And we sang our hearts out. We just learned all those songs by memory because it was dark, and you had to know the words.
I remember we had visited this church several years before when we first came back from Africa, and they canceled the children's story that day because there were no children there that day. It was a low period. And then we came here. There were some other friends. We all came here at the same time and found such a precious, precious family. I remember Mrs. Falkenberg. We were down in the in the kitchen one Sabbath, preparing food, and she said, "Jan," she said, "we're just all one family. We're all the same. We're all family." And we used to have Vespers at that time, and George Rice had a wonderful Revelation series, and the Iversons were here, and Greg said, "Boy, we'd be paying big money in college to get this class."
That's
because
right.
it was such a good series.
Yeah.
This has been a precious family.
It has. And it's interesting. We've been here. We were in Russia for 3 years since 1991, but then we came back home. And many people have changed, come and gone, but the character of this church has never changed. It's been like a family, so much love and warmth and acceptance, and the children have always been involved, which I think is really special. But Vicki has some memories to share. Yes.
You might have to give me the timeout. I possibly could get quite wordy. My dad was Ernie Runge, and come stand by me. My dad was Ernie Runge, my mom was Marion Runge. Yes, she loved to hug, and she loved to cook, and she loved to play the organ, and she loved to decorate, and she loved Christmas. And she never did get us to bring our membership out here. I worked at Washington Adventist University, which was Columbia College then, and we lived in Tacoma Park, and it was a bit of a hike, but we came out whenever Mom and Dad would twist our arm and say, we're going to do something special today, please make sure you come out. So we were out here quite frequently. All three of our kids were dedicated here. Christina and Danny in their times were over here. And then when the youngest, Elizabeth, was dedicated was the same day that Christina was baptized. And Carla Friday went back in the baptismal and was my daughter Christina's resource for her baptism. We will never forget Carla for that. She just really helped Christina to be able to go through that day wonderfully. And before Christina was born, Triadelphia was the first one to give us a baby shower, and there were two of us that were expecting at the same time, and so they gave a dual baby shower for two women, and we both had girls. But at the baby shower, they had these two great big huge teddy bears, and I think we might still just have that teddy bear up in the attic in the cedar closet because it's just such a precious, beautiful teddy bear. It sat in her crib from halfway through the pregnancy till she was too big for the crib. Yeah. And it was just so wonderful. The ingathering with the top hats and the Christmas caroling has always been probably one of my favorite things here. 1995, my son Danny had been born October 15, and so he was baby Jesus that year for the Christmas program, and that was, of course, very, very special. I remember strawberry festivals out at the Elton House. Every summer, during strawberry season, we would go out there and we would gorge on strawberry shortcake and a few other side things, but mostly strawberry shortcake. And we just had so much fun at the Elton House with outdoor games and riding around on their golf carts. And I think it was there one time that Danny kind of fell off the back of a golf cart and broke his arm.
He probably thought it was worth it, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's been on many golf carts since. And let's see. Jean Dorothy and Doc Dorothy would always have Triadelphia out at their place for a spring outdoor picnic as well. And just so many things that, even though I wasn't a member, being the pastor's daughter, and he retired here, but my parents stayed on here after he retired. And there were just so many special music programs. I remember they did a special program for people who had been married here.
Yes.
And my dad made a humongous wedding cake for that event.
And then that's when the couples came back who had been married here.
I think they had
And
about 10
the
of
women
them.
wore their wedding dresses, and they marched down the aisle.
And they renewed their vows.
It was really a special. Do you remember that, those who were here? Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there were about 10 couples that... Yeah, but there were so many unique special events that Triadelphia had that you don't see in many other places. And Christmas was always a big program. It was always covered with poinsettias, and people would buy them in advance and then take them home after the Christmas program. And so we always had lots of poinsettias around for Christmas once the Triadelphia Christmas program was done. But this has always been our favorite place. As I said, all three kids were dedicated here. Christina was baptized here. Both of my parents' memorial services were here. In fact, as we were coming out last night for the Vespers, we were trying to think back, and sure enough, I think the last time we were in this building was when we had my dad's memorial service, and finished that with a ring around the chapel, singing together.
I remember that.
So,
Wonderful memories.
many memories, precious memories, milestones.
And seeing Betty Knickerbocker, her husband, Nick Knickerbocker, had a white beard. And at Christmas time, he would go around. Santa has to go around with us, too, when we go Christmas caroling. So it was very special to have Nick in his Santa hat and his white beard be with us. It's good to see Darlene Sanford. Hadn't seen you in and ages. So, yeah, we know it will never change. There's a special spirit here, a special family. So we feel very privileged to have been a part of it.
Foodie memories.
Foodie
The taco salad, the SpaghettiOs, and the sauerkraut with Big Frank's, and the fruit salad with sherbet. Some of
Carl
these-
Friday's
yeah,
fruit salad. Remember Carl Friday's fruit salad?
some things that you could always count on at Triadelphia.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you for that. So as we turn to our hymnals, to hymn 534, this hymn is Will Your Anchor Hold? And this hymn always reminds me of our anchor being held in Jesus. And God has blessed this church. This church is an anchor for a lot of people, and people who can come to commune with Jesus here. So thank you, Jesus, for that. And let us sing hymn 534, Will Your Anchor Hold?
Thank you.
I grew up on a small island in southeast Alaska, and the island had we had 12 miles of paved road, and the electricity ended at 12 Mile. That was it. We had 2 grocery stores, 2 gas stations, a hardware, a library, and a post office. So if you were to go anywhere, you had to travel by boat or plane. And so hymns are awful lot, in the Bible, Jesus told parables because that's what the people relate to. A message is much more meaningful when you can relate to something in your life. And singing about an anchor, when I grew up, with most people on our island were fishermen as a livelihood. And when we would travel to other islands or, to the lower 48, when we came down to the States, if you travel by ferry, boats were very much a part of my life growing up. And when it talks about we have an anchor, and Jesus is our anchor that keeps our soul steadfast and sure. And the billows roll, that's, everything that goes on in our life. But God keeps us close to him. And we don't have to worry about it because he is never going to move. He's never going to leave us. And we can always be grounded in his love.
Hello again, my name is Wayne Harris, and I have been tasked with talking about the 2000s. But the interesting thing about the 2000s, in order to discuss the 2000s, let's go back a few hours. Who remembers December 31st, 1999? And, what were you doing? That's the day, everybody. So, what day was January 1st, 2000? Anybody remember? It was a Sabbath. Where were you the first Sabbath of Y2K? I honestly knew people who did buy cars that month of December, and they ran up their credit cards because the story was all the computers are going to crash and all your debts were going to disappear. So it wouldn't matter anyway. So everything you bought, you could just keep. So that was the feeling of the year 2000. You don't remember Y2K? Oh my goodness. We woke up and are we still here? Nobody pushed the button. No bombs went off. Nobody remembers Y2K. It was such a big thing, right? So the 2000s really did usher in with computers and a new age. So it even changed the way we kind of worship, didn't we? Looking back at these pictures of Triadelphia through the 70s, this building, there were no screens back there, right? We didn't have screens in 2000s. What do you remember the difference of, if we said the old way of the 1980s and 90s up to ushered into 2000s? And how things have changed. It was amazing to me to look at that. Now to tell our kids when we didn't have screens because we didn't have big TVs because we didn't need them because we only had 3 channels. So it really is different now to even understand. Honestly, do we remember the first time we saw a screen in church? And how that probably was kind of like, I don't know about this. Is the Lord pleased with screens in our church? And are they going to use this? So it is a whole new era, a whole new time for us. So what are some of the good memories? I wasn't here at Triadelphia in 2000. The interesting thing was I was in the area. I came to Triadelphia 5 years ago. I never knew Triadelphia existed. And isn't that weird? Now, Brinklow Church right there, I attended Brinklow for few years, but I never knew Triadelphia existed. So you all were keeping it secret. I know that you were. You did that on purpose. Now I've been here for a while. You didn't want people to know. But what do you remember about the year between 2000 and 2010? Does anybody have any special memories about 2000? Yes, sir.
I think in the 2000s we changed
there
these
changes.
steps, and I go back so far. I remember the old steps. No, I just had to sneak in here something that happened in the 2000s that hasn't been remembered or mentioned yet that we are all indebted to. It's just one sample of many other things that one of our faithful members of those days did for us as a church, besides being our friend, and Linda Friday's husband, Carl. Carl Friday, I'm here, Linda, to remember Carl and how the one thing I remember, he devised the ingenious way of putting a screen up there, and you were talking about screens. We first had a screen when Carl figured out how to open up that thing and mount a screen and have it pulled up automatically with a button in the back with the motors and pulleys. And that was Carl's and many other things that he did around here. Prior to Carl, I remember Martha Ann and Paul's dad, way back, Mr. Belcher. He, I think Lee has already spoken. I was not here when he spoke, and he told us how he put the coat racks that are still up and used to hang our coats on downstairs. But after that, Carl was our handyman around the church and did so many things, to which we're all indebted today in different ways. Thank you, Linda.
Well, that's something I didn't know, but I know if I have gone around the church and they show me certain things, that is actually a winch back there and a cable there. So that was kind of an ingenious situation he did to put that up there. So that's pretty interesting. Anybody else with any memories or any special things that happened in the early 2000 to 2010? Nobody can think of anything from 2000 to 2010. 2001. 2002, we can do it that way. Earlier? Yeah, even early. Oh, yes, come on up. With the lights, I can't really see you all, to tell you the truth, real well. Sarah.
I really am not good at public speaking, but nobody was coming up, so I feel like I'm obligated to come up and say something. So we found this church from a phone book in 2002. I graduated from high school in Montgomery County, and our parents bought a house here in Howard County. So my little sister and I just flipped through the phone book and found this little church. Well, I found this church, not little. We visited Athelton Church around. We visited Spencerville Church, even Burnt Mill Church. But when we got to Triadelphia, it was a lot more like our home church back in Burma, because we sing hymns and it's more traditional, the style, it's a lot similar. So we started coming since 2002, maybe October of 2002. And Jan, Pat Horst, Linda, all these, from our time. The Coopers were here then, and some were moved away. So, yes, it's a lot more like our home church back home in Burma. So we stay here, and it's been 21 years almost. So it's been a blessing to us. I got married here, 2 children, both children were dedicated here, and we're not going anywhere. Oh. Oh yes, the potluck. Burmese foods are kind of famous here.
The most important thing that happened in our family between 2000 and 2010, our 3 daughters were married here at different times, but our church was so supportive, and I remember Elizabeth was the first one to marry, and we were all new at this, and Pat Horst lived right here, and she opened her home to us. You know how you get those little jitters beforehand, and you just need a place to sit down and relax and be refreshed before you meet a zillion people and you're kind of nervous. So Pat will never remember that. I cherish the pictures I have. And the church was so supportive, and our girls still feel like they're coming home when they come to this church. So thank you for all that you have all done to make them feel that way. And the campfires, anybody remember the campfires? We've offered to start that again. We used to have campfires down at the Patuxent River, where you folks grew up twice a year in the spring and the fall. And popcorn over the popcorn, Ted made a rigs with big black iron pot, and that popcorn is the very best. So anyway, we'll have to resurrect that.
Manuel, you wanted to come first? Just come on.
My name is Manuel Rossetti. I'm the little guy that my wife brought from Mexico. Somebody this morning said, "Oh, that's the little guy that she brought from Mexico." Yeah, that's the one. I want to speak about some of the things that my father-in-law did here at this church. After being a pastor from 1995, he did a lot of upkeeps to this church, but especially in 2003, that's when he did the addition downstairs. And I was one of his little helpers. He had a way of doing things, and he put us to work, and I'm sure a lot of you folks were also doing a lot of, Bob Blum was here, I guess he's not here today. He did so many wonderful things to this place. When my mother-in-law passed away, all those things happened back in 2008. So that's within the 2010, right? In the 2000s. And so there was a lot of wonderful things that I can remember about this church. My children, grew up here, and you guys were so wonderful to them. And we appreciate this very much. We're thankful for this wonderful church. And maybe one of these days, we'll come back here and stay.
I remember one day as we were doing the work bee here, somebody commented about the shed that we have. He said, this shed was built to last. Even when Jesus comes, we'll find this shed. So it was nice to meet the one, Manuel there, and Vicky too. They're the ones who said, oh yeah, we took part in building this shed. I'm like, okay, you built it to last then. So we came here 2007, not from Malawi. We are from Malawi, but from Pennsylvania. So we were intrigued that there were so many churches around. So we went to different churches. Church shopping. That's what I heard until we came here. So I didn't know that there's that word, church shopping. So we went to Atherton, and then from Atherton, we went to New Hope. So on our way from New Hope, we saw a sign. It's like, oh, there's a church here too? So, okay, we lived in Colombia. It's like, next Sabbath, we'll come to this church. So when we came here to this church, Elder Rice was on the door, was a greeter that day. So he was like, are you guys new to this area, to our church? I said, yes, we are new to this area. It's like, do you have a church? It's like, well, we are looking around for a church. And then he was like, right, this is your church from now on. And I was like, oh, but we haven't, he was the first person we met. We haven't met anyone else. So we came in the church, and then after church, he preached, and then as we were going out, he stood by the door there, said, can I have your number and your address and where you live? So it's like, oh, wow, what else is going to ask us? So we gave him all the information, and then the following day, on Sunday, he called us. It's like, when are you free this week? That was for the first time here in the U.S. that a pastor came to our house and prayed for us. And then, since then, this is our church. We haven't gone anywhere. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, after the meal, we were downstairs talking, and we had quite a few. We do have someone else? Oh, please, come on.
I just wanted to give a shout out about the Bible Bowl team, that how much this church supported the young people with the Bible Bowl team and the great Pathfinder directors. Pathfinders started back up here with, Carla, what year was it that was the first Bible Bowl? Carla was our captain. About two. Okay, that sounds about right. And we actually started Pathfinders because we wanted to do Bible Bowl. So Kathy Berglund started it up, and they did some other Pathfinder things, but really Bible Bowl was the the whole purpose for it mostly. And we continued on over the years, and there's so many good memories, especially, the leaders taking us on all these different trips as we, would go to the different meetings. And we'll never forget Ian's son Keith having to climb up on the roof in order to help when we got locked out of the place we were staying, and he climbs up, things like this. And then we went out to in Michigan to see the lighthouse. And we were out there in the waters going over top of the walkway, and I'm feeling a little bit nervous, like, well, should we really be here? And then after we leave, and we see this big sign that says, beware, enter at your own, your own risk. And so anyways, we've appreciated the prayers over the years for the Bible Bowl team, and we're so proud of the young people and so thankful for the parents that help coach them and for the Pathfinder leaders. And we, of course, don't want to forget Christy Allen, who was one of the Pathfinder directors and that passed away, bringing her daughter to a Bible Bowl program. So anyways, the Lord has blessed in so many ways, and we're so thankful to him and for all of you for what you've done for the young people in this church.
I could have spoken for the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, because once I came, I stayed. And I moved to Maryland, and it was a very traumatic experience for me. I wanted a job change, but I accepted a job that I was quite sure I didn't like, but I knew there were other opportunities. And it was a very hard time. And one of the three couples that I knew in Maryland or working at the General Conference suggested that I come to Triadelphia Church because it was a smaller church, and I was afraid if I went to a big church, I'd just sit on the back row and wouldn't get acquainted at all. So I came to Triadelphia, and I have never seen another church that was so open. And as a single person coming in, sitting by yourself, you can feel very lonely, but not at Triadelphia. The Sunderlands, the Cullums, the Roberts, people would come up and ask me to either come and sit with me or ask me to come and sit with them, invite me to lunch and so forth. And like I said, once I discovered this Triadelphia, I didn't want to leave. Of course, I have a different perspective of things to remember here, because I did live in the parsonage and I took care of the grounds for 20 years. And so I have all these experiences of running over the underground wasps, who did not appreciate that very much at all, and getting stuck many times on Friday afternoon when I was trying so desperately to get done, and having to call one of the deacons, Bob Blum usually, help, help. Please come and pull me out. And then I had a homeless person that came up here and parked at the end of the parking lot sometimes. And of course, that didn't make me feel too comfortable. And at that time, you couldn't turn on the parking lot lights from the church. You had to go out there and turn on a switch on each of the poles. So when the lighting was changed, when Ernie Runge was here, he was all ready to do it. And I says, oh, please, I need a switch in my apartment so I can turn on the parking lot lights and discourage people from coming up here and parking. Of course, couples did that too sometimes, but he was so accommodating, and I really appreciated that, and it made me feel much more comfortable living up here. One of my jobs was to come in on Sabbath morning and start the furnace, or turn up the heat. And some of you who have been here for a long time remember that sometimes it didn't come on. And we had a cold church. And we met downstairs. Sometimes people brought all kinds of heaters, and we just gathered together and tried to keep warm ourselves. Sometimes the well the well pump didn't work or wore out, and I was several days without water. So it's was an exciting, interesting time. And then one night we had a car fly off, literally, it flew off of the hill out here. They were going too fast. And flew across the road, hit the culvert, went airborne again, and smashed into our sign. And I heard the crash and ran over. Of course, I couldn't see anything from the apartment, so I had to run over here to the church and find out what had happened. So, like I said, it's a little different perspective, but the thing that makes Triadelphia special is the people, and that hasn't changed, and I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Anybody else? You?
To all the Triadelphia children. When they were in school, at academy, and college, year after year, those care packages meant an awful lot. Thank you so much. And Peggy does it now, okay.
All Triadelphian students who received their packages made all of their friends very envious. Your church does this? And it was just, what an outreach that really impressed not just our daughters, but all of those students.
As someone who received one of these packages in California, the mail person who processed the packages would wait until I came back from class to then steal all the chocolates that were in the package because I'm allergic to chocolate. But the dorm would also learn this routine, and there would be a group waiting in the lobby, and I knew I had a package from Triadelphia. So it was very much appreciated in another state, even.
This is one thing about heaven, we won't have to have sound systems, will we? We're going to have perfect acoustics, perfect voices, and we won't need this technology, even though it's really helpful now.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. For thine is the kingdom, thine is the power and the glory forever, forever. Amen. this day our daily bread, and forgive us, Lord, forgive us of our debt, for thine is the kingdom, thine is the power and the glory forever, forever. Lead us, Lord, lead us from temptation, but deliver us from evil, to thy salvation, for thine is the kingdom, thine is the power and the glory forever. Amen. Thine is the kingdom, thine is the power and the glory forever, forever.
Well, that'll be the end of the 2000s. We're going to move to 2010s. Well, after lunch, we were sitting down talking to a group of visitors that came to the church, and they were, oh, this is just such a wonderful place. They were feeling the Triadelphia love also, you know, and they asked me why I was here. And so I have a few stories. One of them is this. The reason I'm at Triadelphia is I believe there are people here that really believe that Jesus is coming back. They're willing to work toward that end, and as a matter of fact, they're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Didn't mean to cut you off, Wayne. When I look at the schedule, I think maybe I got off light with this decade because it's time to quit. In the year 2010, well, first of all, let me say that in the year 2010, at the General Conference, and we've already heard that the Wilsons have been here since the early 90s as members. Pastor Ted was elected as the president in 2010, president of the General Conference. And that was a big day in the life of Triadelphia. But at that General Conference, the Sunshine Singers from Triadelphia sang special music on Sabbath. It was also the decade of the Triadelphia Sparks and their performance in several years at the NAD finals. And I think most of us remember that we had a winning team in Bible Bowl, now called PBE, I think. But I remember it as Bible Bowl. And Triadelphia always did very well. And Sharon, you were the coach and the leader, along with many of the parents, and it made a big difference in the lives of those children. And we appreciate that very much. In the year 2010, April and I arrived here in Maryland with the new responsibilities at the General Conference. In the year 1977, we had come to Maryland and lived in Silver Spring, and I was assigned a responsibility as pastor, one of the pastors at Capitol Memorial Church. So it wasn't our first time, and we remember hearing a little bit about Triadelphia being a new church, but of course we were in Potomac Conference and not in Chesapeake Conference. And there was some feelings, as I recall, as a young pastor there. But aside from that, we arrived here in 2010 for the second stint in Maryland, and we said to ourselves, which church shall we go to? And one of the possibilities, of course, was to go back to Capitol Memorial. We knew many things had changed, but there were a number of our friends and people that we had worked with there, and so that was a possibility. We wanted a smaller church, and I really enjoyed the comment that when some came here to, I think it was the Langs, came here to Triadelphia, they came from Spencerville when it grew to about 250 members, and that's about what Triadelphia is today. We wanted a smaller church, and so we got in the car Sabbath morning, and April said, "Where are we going?" And I said, "Well, let's go look at let's try Triadelphia today, and we'll do our shopping around, and we'll pick the church that fits the best." Well, we came here. Lee Belcher met us at the door. I don't know that there's any Sabbath that Lee has not been greeting people at the door. It was a very friendly and warm welcome. We knew nobody. We knew of names, but we didn't have any friends here that we had really associated with throughout our ministry. So we were really newbies. And we had a wonderful Sabbath. April, being a musician, really appreciated Sherilyn and on the organ. And of course, in those days, David Green and Jamie, they were here today. Playing on the organ, and it was just a wonderful Sabbath. Rob Long was the pastor, and we never went shopping for a church. I told her on the way home that since I would be doing some travel and she would be here more frequently, that she could choose, and she said, "I've already chosen." And so Triadelphia became our family church. And we just have really, really appreciated the friendliness, the warmth, the acceptance. We've been in many wonderful churches. Of course, we have served as pastor in several. We've been members of other churches, and the family of God are wonderful people. But Triadelphia is a very special church. So special that we couldn't resist coming back for the 50th anniversary. And so I just want to share just a few things briefly. Having attended many, many churches in many parts of the world, I would say that Triadelphia is a very unique church. And its friendliness, its involvement of the young people, and it just is a wonderful church. And the words really are not adequate to describe that. There were 3 pastors that served this church during the decade, and maybe a little longer, since I've been asked to come into the decade that we're living in now, so it's about 13 years. Now, first was Rob Long, and then Pastor Ross, Robert Ross, and then Samuel Nunez, who is currently, of course, still our pastor here. In time, I was asked to serve as a local elder, became acquainted with the other local elders here, and April became more and more involved in the music program for the Triadelphia Church. April was the faithful attender. I was the absentee attender, but everybody still loved me. And I appreciate that because of my responsibilities. And of course, we're all well acquainted with the fact that we had a number of elders who traveled as a result of being part of the General Conference and their assignments, and that still goes on, but you have accepted all of us, and it's very, very much appreciated. It was really a privilege to be members here and to be able to just fellowship and rub shoulders with the wonderful leaders, not only here in the local church, but also in the world church. There are a lot of people out there who think that it's a hoity-toity bunch of people that work at the General Conference. And I, having spent 10 years, can attest to the fact that they are very dedicated, very humble, very loyal, and faithful members of God's church. And it was just a privilege to be able to serve here in various ways. I remember the lighting system that was put in. It looks like you've been able to get more lights down here. That was a problem when it first was put in. Anybody who stood down here was in the dark. And of course, the sound system was upgraded, and that was done under the leadership of Dr. Mark Mashburn and the AV committee at that time. I can remember I believe that it was during the time when Pastor Ross had left and Pastor Nunez had not yet even been selected, and I had been asked to serve as the head elder. There was a phone call that came in on Sabbath, and I had a difficult time understanding the voice at the other end of the line, but the lady wanted Bible studies, had visited this church, and you all know her very well, those of you who are currently members. I was scheduled to leave for an itinerary the next day or two, and so I passed the request on to Jim Howard. And that caller was Jeneth, who later fell in love with Alex and vice versa. And they're here today. So romance grows well here in Triadelphia and permanently. There are many things I could share, but I'll just share quickly because we're really out of time. Having been a pastor, I rarely had a pastor visit in my home. And even when we were serving in conference capacities, we rarely had a pastor come. In fact, if I remember correctly, when I was scheduled for my first knee replacement surgery, Gerhard Fondel came to our home and he prayed with me. And that may have been the first pastoral visit of that kind and prayer that I had ever experienced. Gerhard is a jewel. For my second knee surgery, he did the same thing. It was a great privilege to serve with the others as the head elder here. we were blessed to be able to talk about the work of the church, evangelism in the church, and to pray together. It's a very special privilege to do so. And I'm not sure that I was ready for it, but I accepted the responsibility or the invitation to be the chair of the building committee. And out of that project, Hope Rising occurred. And I had hoped that by the 50th anniversary, or all the construction would be done. And I do remember Pastor Rick Remmers. I talked with him one day. I think I was at the office. He was the conference president for Chesapeake at that time. And he said to me, "Fred, don't get your hopes up." He said, "Howard County is a real pain to work with." He may not have used quite those words, but that was the gist of the conversation. And I remember thinking to myself, we're doing everything right. We've got good architects. We've got wonderful people on the committee. We can answer all their questions. But 5 years later, Gonzalo told me this morning that we are, millimeters from getting the approval. And that was good news. But it has taken a lot longer than I think all of us thought it would take. And so I look forward to sometime in the near future coming back and seeing that project. And when we left to go to Colorado, we are grateful to leave it in the good hands of Gonzalo, who was probably even more qualified than I was. But it was a privilege to work with that group of individuals on the building committee. It was Tony, Gonzalo, Miriam, the two Cranes, Diane and Don, Doug Venn, Ephraim Delgado, and then, of course, when Pastor Nunez came, he joined that as well. We remember well the Dinner with the Doctor programs that we got started. And we appreciate all the help of the team that made that possible. Another experience that I remember well, and by the way, those of you who are in that decade and you want to speak, come and sit and we'll take you one by one, no problem. But I had served on a nominating committee in one church previously, but I'd never been asked to be the chairman. And so, being the chairman here, I can tell you that it was wonderful to work with the group that we had that year. I think it was Tony, Linda, Albert, and Jan. And I can tell you that any nominating committee can be benefited by having someone as the scribe that we had by the name of Tony Williams. The organization was superb, and it was wonderful, Tony. At the end of that decade, beginning of the one we currently are living in, a sea change occurred with COVID-19. Sea change of how we did church, how we did administration, it did almost everything. And it was all new in 2020. And we no longer could meet here in church. And of course, Pastor Nunez remembers this very well. We elders met, distanced, and wondered what to do, as most churches did. And so we moved to streaming services, elders' phone calls, at least to try and provide some ministry to our members. The Lord blessed. And of course, we had Zoom board meetings, and the whole world has changed since then. Chapel in the Woods was revived. I can remember walking down in the weedy woods, wondering what that was down there in the woods. Because we had never used it during that time, but in 10 years. But with COVID, we saw the need, being out in the fresh air. And I can remember the elders praying that the Lord would give us rainless Sabbaths so that we could utilize Chapel in the Woods. It was a wonderful group of individuals that made that happen. Chandler Riley was already, I think, thinking about using it for the young people. And we worked together. I had the privilege of doing a number of things there. Michael Stengo, I saw him earlier today, painted the benches as well as the platform down there. And I was thrilled yesterday when we came to see that a new entry has been made. Looks really, really nice, and it's better than that steep hill. Makes it possible for more people to utilize it. What a blessing that is for the Triadelphia Church. Look forward to having Vespers on this evening there, at least according to the schedule. Even though the decade was a time of great upheaval and change in the world in which we live, Triadelphia nestled on this little hill, and I didn't know until today that it had originally planned to be built down lower, but I'm glad it's up here. Although I know in the wintertime we worry a little bit about its location, when it snows especially, or gets icy. Nestled here on this hill has been a blessing to so many, not only those of us who have been here and been able to worship and fellowship, but also to many who have come, experienced, and gone to many parts of the world to serve the Lord. And that has been a great blessing to the global church and the world church. Did you want to share something? Please. Shane.
I had to ask Rick, but we joined in 2012, right? It was interesting because we went from being a pastor's family. I've never had to take my family and join a church. So when we moved down to this area, Rick said he was going to be traveling so we could pick. We spent 1 year church shopping. There's a lot of churches in this area. And we had a lot of friendships in a lot of churches. So after that, Rick and I talked and we said, let's let the children decide. And they were into Bible Bowl from our other churches. And the church to beat was the Triadelphia Church. So when we came to this area, we visited here, and it was Triadelphia is a safe place for your children. It is a very safe place. They enjoyed the Bible Bowl. They stayed every year until I think they aged out. I'm sure they aged out. And a blessing that sticks to this very day is in the sweet few weeks that our children can all still be sitting in the same pew together. When the pastor is preaching, one of them, there's always one that will lean over and say, "That's my chapter. That's my chapter." So, and they have many chapters now in their lifetime through all these PBEs that they have remembered that those are their chapters, and they still take ownership to this day over that. And besides that, it's been wonderful for Rick and I too, but it was fun that they got to choose a church. Sabbath schools were great. It wasn't a, what do you think? It's what does God's word say? And so it was a wonderful place to be. Thank you.
Well, it seems strange to be back up here. I've been up this pulpit many times before. Cindy and I came here in 1996 after we got married. We were mixed marriage. What do you call it? she'd been married before, I'd been married before. And so we were looking for a church. And her youngest daughter, Megan, was still living with us. So we needed a church that would fit all of our needs, especially Megan. And so I think we went to 2 other churches. And I remember coming here years ago. In fact, there weren't any pews here when I came. There's just folding chairs. That's how far long ago it was. But we came here and got met. I don't know whether, probably Lee. Yeah, I mean, but anyway, it was such a friendly welcome. And I mean, it just took us in like we were family already. And next, on the way home, it was no, where do we go? Back to Triadelphia. And we've been going to Triadelphia ever since that time till 2014, I think it was. So that's, it's good to hear that this church is carrying that tradition. You mentioned caroling. That was one of my favorite things too. I loved that. And the top hats and the outfit. Now, Cindy and I were involved in early American reenactment, so we had early American clothes. So I started wearing my early American clothes with a cape, and instead of a top hat, I had a tricorn and a candle lantern, and it was just great fun to go out and do that. And what was interesting is, all these houses, pretty wealthy neighborhood you're caroling in and all, but they all opened their doors. Most of them were ready with their offering. We had done it so much, and they, some were, we were looking forward to you. When you were going to be here, So that was a lot of fun there. Speaking of doing 18th century, that also got me into telling children's stories here. I did several in which I dressed up. One time as George Washington. I was standing up here and giving my story, all the children in the benches here. And for an emphasis of something, I drew my sword. And the kids are, oh! But some woman back in there, I don't remember who it was, goes, oh! I thought she was going to faint. I put my sword back in. I didn't want to disturb the church anymore. But children's stories, where's Wayne? He did the children's story today. Yay. I brought in a train table for one of my stories. I don't know whether anybody here remembers that one, but I had a train running up here. I didn't have children up here. There was men right there on the side. Let's see. One children's story I told here, I named it A Rooster Named Satan. And that was the first time I told it. And it was actually based on Ephesians 6, which is in our Sabbath school, putting on the whole armor of God. And that story, Cindy and I had gone to 3 mission projects while we were here at this church, a 4th afterwards. And that was Haiti, Nicaragua, Nepal, and then later El Salvador. I've told that story in all those missions places, so that story has gotten around the world. In fact, in the one place, I think it was El Salvador, he told me, the pastor came up to me and he says, can I use your history? Because that was a story about me being a little boy. And I'm like, my history? I didn't tell you my history. I didn't realize that they were talking about my experience. History, my history. They just, your history. But So yeah, I gave him that permission, and I've heard later that he even had it acted out down there in El Salvador. So that started here, that story that's gone around the world. Cindy and I, of course, the church put us to work soon after we got here. We became, or Cindy was, and then of course Cindy's doing it, I had to help. Kindergarten. I don't know how many years we were in kindergarten. We got promoted to primary after a while. One of the things that the diversity of cultures that you have here is interesting, and we used that. I'll tell you the one. We had this Bible story on the Tower of Babel, and Cindy said, "What are we going to do about this?" And I thought about it. I says, "I know what we'll do." I brought in a box of big boxes, cardboard boxes, and I forget now how many we had. We might have had 12, 13, or 14 of these boxes like this big. And so we had the kids start to build the tower with these boxes. And then we said, the language got confused. So all of you start talking in your own language, Spanish, and whatever. And so they did, and that was fun to watch. Can you, I'm sure that's how it happened at the Tower of Babel. So those are the things that we had fun here. One of the other things Cindy and I got involved in is we played dulcimer here. This goes back, can't think of her first name, Birdsong. What was? Yes, Sandy Birdsong. She played the dulcimer here, mountain dulcimer. And I loved the mountain dulcimer music before that. And so I went up to her afterwards and I says, "I got to learn to play that." So she put us in touch with some people she know and all. So Cindy, Megan, and myself all took dulcimer lessons. And we didn't think ourselves very good, but now the name, he used to go to Alternate House all the time and play once a month. Anybody remember his name? Anyway, he cornered us and got us to go play at the Alternate House. And we played, the only song that we knew very well was Whispering Hope. And the next month, we didn't learn anything more, so we played Whispering Hope. I forget now how many months there we played Whispering Hope. We figured they wouldn't remember. Unfortunately, I'm getting to that age too. Excuse me. But now I'm showing my age because I can't remember the name. Cindy, can you help me? Who got us? Kathy Russell, that's it. Kathy Russell taught music down here. Kathy and her husband are now in a Carolina conference. But she said, "We're going to get up and play for church." And I said, Cindy first, yeah, no, we're not. It's hard enough to play for the Alternate House, But no, she says, "We're going to play for," and what are we going to play? Whispering Hope. The only song we know. So Kathy told me before we got up here, she says, "Now, when you look out there, you don't see any faces. You just see pumpkins. And that'll help you not be nervous." So we lined up here. We sat down, looked down at my dulcimer. I looked up, and there was faces. I froze. Well, we got through that, and that thing bloomed. How many? One, Sarah Saw is still here, was one of our members of our dulcimer group. and played with us. And we had that until we left here. I became deacon here, had deacon duties. I know we used to count money over here. Do you still count money over here? Children's story, children's offering. There was somebody in here that did origami with money. All this folded in different shapes and everything. And kids just loved, whoever that was, they would get that money. You know how much time it took to unroll those things back here? Well, one of the strangest things I think I did as deacon duty here. Pat was talking about the pump going out to the well on time to time. We were having church was going on here, and somebody came to us and says, the well's out, there's no water. And, what are we going to do for a fellow dinner down there? Can't flush the toilets, we're just going to have to close up and go. And somebody says, one of the other deacons says, the baptismal's full of water, and church is going on, and we're, the way down goes all the way down there. We had a bucket brigade. We were going up here, up through there, and I remember trying to dip my bucket of water in there, and I looked down, and Cheryl was playing the piano, and she looked up, and I thought I looked right in her eyes, but I talked to her later, and she said, no, she didn't see. But we were bucketing water out and carrying it down to flush toilet and to have water downstairs to keep church going and everything. And surprisingly, I talked to other people, and nobody seemed to know what was going on back there. But this has been a blessing for Cindy and I. We hated to leave. We moved to West Virginia, and we were going to, Cindy says, can we still come back? And I said, yeah, if you want to get up early to drive the 100 miles, one way. And we did that some, but unfortunately, it caught up with us. In Martinsburg Church, where we're going now, is close, but not Triadelphia Church. We like it there. The thing is, they started us out, and before we had transferred our membership, they asked me to do some things, and I said, oh, I can't hold office, I'm not a member yet. Well, there's these things that you can do that you don't have to be a church member, and that got us, and we're there now. But we miss Triadelphia Church. It's good to come home, and I thank you for this and carry on this tradition of this church. It's wonderful.
I'm going to just step in a moment because refreshments are to be at 5:30. And do I interpret that there are 3 people who want to share? And I would say that Mrs. Smith would like to share. So I remember earlier that Elder Wilson said we had 7 minutes. Isn't that what something you said? Yeah. We had 7 minutes. And so if you divide that by 4, real quick, a minute 45, a minute 45, a minute 45, a minute 45, a minute 45. And I encourage you to all come up here and sit. Mrs. Smith, if you would not like to wait, that's okay. I defer to a little bit further. So the 3 of you that are coming, so please come share. Then we'll have a closing hymn, and we'll go to refreshments. So come now. Maybe I didn't say that part. Now. Thank you. Minute 45. Thank you. It'll take a little longer. It's okay.
Okay, so unlike many of you, we were not shopping for a church when we came here. We had a church 3 blocks away. It was very easy to go there. And there was nothing wrong with that church. But there was one Sabbath that some friends of ours that used to attend here, it was their last Sabbath here. They were going to move, and so we decided, well, why not go to Triadelphia, go spend with them. And let me give you a snapshot of that first Sabbath. Pastor Rob Long was preaching to date it, sort of. He preached, in his sermon, he mentioned watching the royal wedding, William and Kate, so it was 2011, and when that finished, I remember Carl Friday came directly to us to greet us, because he noticed these people were new, and he joked about his last name being Friday, something along those lines. And then many others came to greet us, and we felt, wow, this is such a warm church. Now, technically, this didn't happen on the first Sabbath, but the second. Jan came to us, and with her sweet way and warm way, said this: "So, I hear that you are liking this church and might attend here. How would you like to help?" So, Jan, you were the ones who got us in, because that's exactly what we needed. We needed commitment, and we needed to be helping in our local church. That was what was missing in the other one. Thank you, Jan. And so let me tell you that when in 2020 we moved to Hagerstown, we made an internal arrangement that this church meant so much to us that we were going to keep coming. So Cindy and Paul, we can sort of carpool if you would like. This church is so meaningful, so special to us in many ways. I had memories, but I'm not going to tell about them. Let me just tell you that we just spent 5 months away, and the one thing that I terribly missed was this church. So you family are such a blessing to everyone. And that spirit of Triadelphia, as Nancy mentioned, has kept through the years, no matter how people come and went, especially in 2015. I remember that there was a huge turnaround in this church with, DC session and many retiring and many going away. That spirit is still there. And as I hear from the early ones, it has been there always. And I pray that it continues to be a blessing for many.
So I thought my story was unique, but it sounds like my story is just like everybody else's. So we first came to the Triadelphia Seventh-day Adventist Church in 2015. We had just gotten back from Brazil, and I had hit the road running, and I was ready to get back in the mission field. Let's go, let's do mission trips, let's go, come on. And anyways, so we got here, and I'm like, you know what? I told my wife, I said, I love this church. This church, we would go downstairs, and we saw all the posters about separating money to give to different missions, and we're like, this is the church that we want to go to. But God had other plans, and we ended up settling in another church, Gaithersburg, Brazilian Seventh-day Adventist Church, where we met the new pastor, Joel Almeida, and his wife, Christy Allen, and we ended up staying there for about 4 years, and they left Gaithersburg and ended up in Triadelphia, and they invited us here for some event, and I had worked with Christy Ellen before in Pathfinders, and she's like, Stephen, you have to stay here for Pathfinders. You got to join Pathfinders. And I had had a very bad experience at the last church. The parents didn't quite understand what Pathfinders was, and so it was very stressful. And I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to be a part of Pathfinders. I'm going to take a break, and I'm just going to not going to do anything. Well, Christy Allen evidently obviously wasn't in on that conversation, and 4 years later, we're involved in Pathfinders and everything, and we're like, okay, this is it. we just loved Triadelphia. We'd come here early in the morning, and we would sometimes leave at 9:30 at night. And it's like, this is what church should be. And we are never going to leave. And then the Lord says, I have a mission for you. You're going to Dover. And my wife says, how far away is that from Triadelphia? I said, an hour and 40 minutes. Oh, that's not far. We can do that every Sabbath. I said, I'm pretty sure that for the understanding that I got is that I have to join that church when I go to teach there. And she's like, oh, man. But anyways, we love Triadelphia, and we'll always be coming back. And we'll always remember the warmth of the Triadelphia church.
Elder Fred, anybody needs only few seconds listening to me to have a hard time understanding me. So I bet the message was worse. And that's 4 years ago when I wasn't married with a gringo, and my English now is supposed to be better than that time. What you don't know is that week after, I received a phone call from Tony, or Tony called Alex, and they say that you called them. And when I request that Elder Jim Howard, he was questioning, why do you want to get baptized? But are you sure we want to do the full Bible studies? We want to go through all the doctrines of the church? And in my mind, it's like something is weird. Just 1 month ago, less than a month ago, a few weeks ago, I visited for the first time one Adventist church, Hispanic Adventist church. And just the next day, it was a week of prayer and nighttime. And the next day that I went, the pastor called me out of the church, and he said, this Sabbath we have baptism. You have to get baptized. You don't want to get baptized? This guy just sent me this for the first time in his life, and he wants me to get baptized. I wasn't ready. Few weeks before I come here. And I remember Alex invited me to have a day of fasting and prayer, and that day changed my life. And that's why I made the call. And I say, now I'm ready. And then when I say I'm ready, somebody say, let's go a little more deeper. But since 2019, March 30, 2019, my life really changed. And then came COVID, and I praise the Lord for COVID. Because COVID, it makes me think about how many things we have at home, how many clothes, shoes, food. And it made me think a lot about my people in my country, Venezuela. And that's how this started, the ministry that you all see that I'm so happy. This is amazing that you see in the bulletin this that you have. And Triadelphia has been part of this, that how this started with just a couple of boxes. And now we can tell that we don't have not just a family or a church or a state. We have helping a whole country with thousands of members of churches in Venezuela who've been receiving Bibles, literature, hymnals, great controversies, steps to Christ. And this is thanks because the church is being willing to help. And I'm so happy to be part of this church. And I remember the first time that Alex invites me to this church, yes, I was hunting churches. And then I tell Alex, I don't want to go. I already found the church, just let me here. And then he said, just one time, let's go to Triadelphia. And then I said, okay. That time I came with a lot of jewelry, I don't know if you remember. And I was like, okay, let's go, just one Sabbath, because I want to get baptized in that church. And after that Sabbath, I stayed. And I'm still here. And it's a theme. It's a theme, yes. Yes, and there's so many people who are welcoming, and I praise the Lord for all of you. I praise the Lord for my wonderful husband, who just few months later, he proposed me, and then few months later, we got married. And this church is amazing, so thank you.
I'm Carol Smith, and back in the 70s, many of you who are as old as we are remember the missions pamphlet that came, and you had a mission story every week, but it was many times just read out of the booklet. When I came to Triadelphia, I sat amazed. How many of you remember the Saxon family? Virginia Saxon would take the mission story, and with her family of children and her husband, they would reenact the mission story instead of having it read. She did beautiful Christmas programs also. So Virginia was a very dynamic person, and I soon found out when she made a phone call to you, it was for something important. And she said, I would like you to buy some Tupperware. And I said, but I don't really need any Tupperware. She says, but this is a mission program, and you need to buy some. And before I hung up the phone, I had committed to buy 3 pieces of Tupperware from her. So whatever Virginia did, she did well. And I remember with fondness the hard work that she put into all the programs that she was in charge of. It's one of my favorite memories of Triadelphia.
We'll have closing hymn. I just want to ask you to, if you have not signed the guest book, to please do. Doug Venn, our AV king of all things, is requested. There's a photo, a couple photos that they didn't get, and maybe many, I don't know. If you are in the group of, you were at the groundbreaking or baptized here or an adventurer here, I know we don't have as many people as we did earlier, to please come to the front. They'd like to do that photo. There is still time. And I feel compelled. I've been involved in the service, but no real opportunity to share. And so I just think of something really because it's about someone else, and that's Don and Diane Crane. They are retired and living in North Carolina, and they watch church service often because sometimes if one of us is up front, I'll have a text from him or a message. And I remember when we first came here in 2013, early in 2014, Don was reaching out to us because he was doing this to many people. I just didn't know it. And he and his wife started and owned and made Eltern House happen. So many of you know of Eltern House, assisted living. I don't know if that's the right term, but that kind of place nearby. And so our family was invited. We'd go, my son, my children, and my wife playing the piano. She was playing today. And just this idea, I've heard it all today. This is what it's really neat. It's just like people inviting, like Jan, like inviting, hey, just come. And so it's like, well, you come, and your wife can play the piano, your son can tell a story, you can do the devotion, whatever those pieces were. And then I learned our family was one of many, and then they'd have children out there. So this idea of hands and feet really rang true. And that sense of Don and Diane Crane were part of that, of involving other people. And it was a blessing for me and my family to be able to go to Eltern House, and people so excited to see us and have my son at whatever age, he was doing this when he was 5. He's been able to read since he was like -2. And so he's been reading for a long time. And so just involving him and us has just been a blessing. And so I was just mentioned in particular, Don and Diane Crane were the particular hands and feet that I engaged with when we first came here, and it's been a blessing as well. Thank you all for sharing. It's been just a beautiful day, and we can continue to share. We're going to have refreshments. Kenzie's going to lead us in music. I enjoy the way she leads in music. She's got more energy than me, and I just have to sit up a little taller, but I appreciate that very much. But thank you for being here and for sharing.
Before we sing the closing song, I wanted to be able to introduce myself to those of you who may not have had the privilege yet to get to know me. My name is Kenzie Calvert, and I was born and raised in Alaska, but now I am a Lance Corporal in the United States Marine Corps, and so I'm stationed at Fort Meade, Maryland. And when I came here, I wanted to look for a church. And I remembered this church because when I was in university, my sister and I went to Southern. One year we came up for a spring break and spent it at the Klinkbeil family household. And they brought us to this church. And I was like, I wonder how far away Triadelphia Church is from Fort Meade. And it took me a couple of weeks to get it coordinated before I could get myself, get a ride here. And when I came, I was like, this is it. I don't even need to visit any other church in the area. This church feels like home. And so I had recognized that as a theme, as other people got up and shared, that Triadelphia has been the home. And members come and go, but as a whole, the congregation has been welcoming and has become home to those who come through. So in recognition of that, I would like to sing one verse of hymn number 652, Love at Home. And then we'll sing our closing song. Turn in your hymnals to hymn number 626. In a little while, we're going home, and please join me in standing as we sing our closing hymn. Hymn number 626.
In a little while we're
not only is the theme of that song a promise, it's also a prayer that each of us can have. In a little while, we're going home.
Let's bow our heads. Loving Father in heaven, it's been a joy to be here, to fellowship together, to share, and to worship you on this Sabbath day. We thank you, Lord, for the way you have led and blessed this church, part of your family of churches around the world. We all feel that it is a very special place, and it is that because your Spirit works through your people. And now, as we continue fellowshipping, we just do so grateful for the hope we have and the promise that in just a little while, Jesus is coming. We ask that by your grace, that we might each one be ready, is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
So we are going to go to refreshments, but if you were in those three groups I mentioned before, baptized here, at the groundbreaking, or adventurers, if you'd come up front, and the line won't be as long for refreshments as it was for lunch. Thank you.